I'm going to get going here. And I just want to welcome everyone to our seventh episode of Dallas Influences Sport and Entertainment Virtual Speaker Series. Each week you guys log in for 30 minutes. It's free, and you get to hear from sports and entertainment leaders across the country. And we're very happy to have all of you each week. My name is Carla Rosenberg. I'm president of DICE, and in my regular day job, I serve as the Senior Vice President for the newly rebranded Sport 5. Yes, we now have a company name I can spell. To say it's been an eventful week would be an understatement. I would be remiss if I didn't say that I share the outrage and sorrow over the injustices that have led to the recent tragic loss of life. I grew up in a country that had persistent inequality and was, by force of law, divided along racial lines. Being unheard is a terrible, terrible feeling, especially when it leads to tragedy. And today I want to use our platform to reiterate that we stand for equal human rights. We're an organization of DFW area professionals from the field of sports and entertainment. And in my life, I've often seen sports as a force to bring people together, irrespective of background, ethnicity, or other external factors. I hope that we and the world can channel that spirit and be committed to being better all the time, not just in these moments. So that said, community service is a huge part of DICE's mission, and funds raised through the speaker series, which we started back in April, will be donated to the North Texas Food Bank. We've allocated the funds towards family box meals, as the food bank is really battling to keep up with demand during this unprecedented time. Our friends at the Dallas Stars Foundation, the Texas Rangers Foundation, and the Dallas Mavs have kindly joined us to match up to $5,000 of the funds we are raising during these weekly speaker series. So we want to thank them. We've raised a little over $3,000, and with your assistance, we can reach our goal of $5,000 to maximize the match. So I'll go ahead and like I do every week, I'll put the donation link in the chat section so you may contribute today. I also want to encourage everyone that's tuned in to please feel free to ask questions throughout this program. There is a Q&A feature below, and I ask that you guys feel free to ask questions and also participate in a poll, which is going to pop up on the screen. All right, there it is. And please fill that out, and we'll address these results during the discussion. So, on to our featured speaker today. He's one of Hockey's News Top 100 People of Power and Influence in the sport. As the NHL's Chief Business Officer, Keith Wachtel is responsible for day-to-day leadership and management of all revenue-generating initiatives. He works on corporate partnerships, ad sales, licensing, sponsorship, events, and digital media. He's been heavily involved in monetizing international games and breaking ground in the technology and sports betting categories. All that has led to him being a key contributor to the league's ability to generate more than $5 billion in annual revenues. Before the NHL, Keith was a director of business development for the National Football League. And in 6 seasons with the NFL, he was involved in securing more than $300 million in long-term league partnerships. He also served as the director of integrated sales and marketing for SFX Sports Group, and he worked for some of the largest media buying agencies specializing in sports, including Young & Rubicam, Bates USA, and Zenith Media. He earned a bachelor's from George Washington and a master's from Fordham. He's a 2-time Sports Business Journal 40 Under 40 honoree. Keith and his wife Allison and his 2 kids live in Westchester, New York. We know Keith keeps a tremendously busy schedule and appreciate him being with us today. Joining Keith is our moderator, Kern Egan, who is co-founder and chairman of DICE and serves as president consulting of the newly rebranded Sport 5. Kern's resume spans global agencies, leagues, and brands, and he too has been a Sports Business Journal 40 Under 40 honoree. Plus, key to this discussion, Kern worked closely with Bridgestone on the far-reaching NHL partnership that we in Dallas saw in action this January at the Bridgestone Winter Classic. So Kern, I'll have you take it from here.
Thanks, Carlo. No bad pun. Usually that's the transition. I guess you're off your game today, but thank you for the intro. Thank you for giving me a reason to shave once a week and put on a collared shirt. So thanks for that. And thanks everybody for being here. Mr. Wachtel, nice to see that beautiful face of yours as always. Thanks for joining.
Thank you, Kern. I didn't put on a collared shirt, but thank you, Carl, and thank you for that made-up resume. It reminded me of Seinfeld telling Costanza that he's really built himself up into something. So
Really built
yourself into an architect.
Yeah, or marine biologist.
Right.
All right, so let's jump in. Thanks again for joining us, and let's see how we can kind of shed some light on what's happening in the world of hockey and the business of hockey. So I think I have this right, but you'll tell me that with your announcement last week, the NHL is the first major sports league to announce a specific plan for return to play. Can you bring us up to speed on the latest related to getting back on the ice? It seems like things change daily, so I don't want to assume anything for the audience.
Sure, and they actually do change daily. So, you said we were the first. Being first wasn't necessarily a priority for us. The NBA announced we're planning on announcing their format. There's a lot of news in the press today. We think it's great. It's great for all of sports. It's great for entertainment. And we certainly couldn't be more happier for the fans than to be able to make these announcements. But as we'll get into, making an announcement about what we want to do and actually doing it are two very different things in today's current climate. So last Tuesday, though, we did announce a return to play format, which the Commissioner Bettman, along with the NHL Players Association, announced a 24-team format that would have an expanded group of teams that could qualify for the playoffs. 8 teams were the top 4 teams in each conference have qualified for the playoffs. The remaining 16 teams will play what will be a qualification round to determine who would get into the traditional 16-team format. But I would say what was great about what we were able to accomplish was really the collaboration that we had with the Players Association, which, as you know, is difficult in today's sports world, where you often have a lot of contradictory views, and you see some of that now. But we had a return to play committee that included 5 players, and I think that was key. Not only to have the owner's perspective, certainly the league's perspective, understanding to some degree what fans and media wanted to see, but the players, they're the ones that are going to be on the front lines, and it was very important. And that collaboration, I think, really allowed us to get to where we were last Tuesday, but also to be able to get us to what ultimately is playing a full complement of the Stanley Cup playoffs. And from a dates perspective, while it's certainly going to be flexible, the commissioner and deputy commissioner announced that right now facilities are opening as states allow for gatherings and opening of buildings. We're hoping to have a training camp that will begin somewhere around July 10th. And then soon thereafter, if all goes well, have what will amount to be approximately 2 months of play. And ideally, we'll be able to do that and award the Stanley Cup.
I mean, as painful as this has to be, I mean, set aside the health and welfare of, people kind of going through this, economically or otherwise. I mean, from a business standpoint, from a business ownership standpoint, this has had to have been, extremely painful. But on the other end, you might be sitting right, at the precipice of just an incredible time, an incredible 2-month window, for the sport. Kind of what's the internal, kind of chatter about that? And are there any special, plans to take advantage of that attention for any reason, or is it too early to really know?
Well, I think we're seeing the people craving sports, craving content. And, we can talk certainly about what we're doing to keep fans engaged in the sport, the content that we're creating. But I don't know if, for those that didn't see today, Nielsen came out with a stat that 82% of people today have either been playing video games or watching esports since the pandemic began, which is a huge number. And I see it in my household, certainly. So I think that, there's nothing positive from certainly a financial standpoint that's going to come out of this for anyone, not just the leagues, the teams, the broadcasters, the whole ecosystem, right? Both on a national and a local level. But with that always comes opportunities to create new and exciting formats like we're doing, as we just talked about, for the qualification and for the playoffs. Looking at technology, way to engage our fans in a different way. How are we looking at a building without fans, which for our sport especially is unique given, we believe that, live, nothing beats the sport of hockey, and certainly during the playoffs and the enthusiasm for that. But everyone is going to have to reimagine themselves, and each sport, each entertainment property has its own challenges. So we're looking at that to create something unique and different, not only to see if it works and engage, but the future, right? There continues to be a shift in how people consume content, how people consume live sports. And ultimately, we're going to look to do some things in the technology space, new camera angles, looking at ways to integrate more virtual production elements onto the screen, almost create a entertainment look and feel, a Hollywood look and feel, perhaps, to what these games could look like. So it's going to be really, really interesting. I do believe that when we come back, that there will be a pent-up demand. So I do see and hope that there'll be increased engagement, whether that's through television, streaming products, highlights, whatever content that any of the properties put out. But I do think that there will be a tremendous enthusiasm for the sport. But the other thing is, the calendar is not going to be the same. Right? There could be times where we're playing multiple games in a day that could start in the afternoon on a Tuesday. Now, granted, a lot of people won't be at work, but we're all still working. So it'll be interesting to see, Kern, what actually happens. But I think when all is said and done, you will see better engagement than perhaps we have in the past. But what we get there, we lose in that enthusiasm and excitement for being at the live game itself. Feeling the fans, seeing the fans standing an entire game or waiting for that overtime goal with anticipation and enthusiasm. Nothing is going to be able to replace that. And that's why we hope that next season we'll be able to get back to having fans, and we'll look back on this as a great learning experience for so many reasons within all of our organizations, and look back on it that it was just one crazy season out of a lifetime of seasons that will continue to let everybody engage in the ways that we're all accustomed to.
Yeah, I just can't believe we might be watching meaningful hockey, in August. And, I don't know how many people, I mean, sure this is prominent in your world, but for the audience, you have a pretty unique broadcast partner in NBC that's going to be going through its own challenges with the summer and the lack of Olympics. Is that creating opportunities for you or informing your decision-making at all?
Well, absolutely. So originally, prior to when the Olympics got canceled, they were starting July 23rd. So for the most part, we were going to have to be off the air by then, while there might have been some windows at NBC, who's a great partner of ours, could have helped with. They were going to be running Olympics on all their channels. Once the Olympics got canceled, it did open up now this opportunity, as you said, to play not only through the summer, but certainly into September, is what it looks like now. So it's certainly going to be great content. The networks are really clamoring for live sports again. But you say watching hockey in August. I mean, watching the Masters perhaps, in November, the Triple Crown being in fourth quarter. What's going to be amazing is all the sports might be coming back at the same time, right? So generally there's a shift. You have some overlap, but between NASCAR and the NBA, the NHL, golf tournaments, horse racing, the NFL, all could be going on at once. But I think that's great for fans. The more people that are consuming it, the better off we're going to be. I also do think it will show truly live sports is DVR proof. It's the one thing that I think is consistent in the calendar of sporting events. But, you talk about a challenge. You could spend an entire, let alone half hour a day talking with the folks at NBC about what they're going to and how they're going to manage. They're going to have a Summer Olympics, right? They have Super Bowl, they have the Winter Olympics, all within a short window. So it's really interesting, and how marketers are going to respond to that, right? We hope they're going to come back. They're going to need to come back. We're going to do everything we can to help them come back. But there's going to be a lot of properties that are coming back at the same time. And we all have a lot of the same marketers. So they're going to have to make some choices as well. But it certainly will be an exciting and interesting time. I caveat all of that with the hope that the pandemic continues to go down, that we are able to begin to play, that municipalities and governments open up the opportunity for us to play in venues. Forget gatherings of fans, but just our ability to play the game and then manage, what we're all calling that bubble, so that we can complete whatever that, 6, 8, 10 weeks, that depending on what sport you are, is going to be able to complete that, while at the same time baseball is just starting up and the NFL is starting up. So it's going to be pretty wild, but something that hopefully is better than the alternative.
You mentioned looking at everything, right? Kind of forced innovation based on the marketplace. Is it more the acceleration of innovation that was sort of in the pipeline, or are you guys seeing totally new ideas being, and platforms and technologies being thrown your way?
We're seeing both. What's interesting is a lot of times this does provide opportunities. I'll give you a great example, but something that actually, unfortunately, this is curtailed. We're developing technology called digitally enhanced dashboards. It's our ability to overlay our in-arena boards for something more unique that would be full ownership, animation, a whole new way to displaying our game on the dashboards. And everyone, given the fact that there's going to be more people potentially watching, trying to talk about, can we rush that? Can we do that for this season or even next season? Unfortunately, the technology and the timeline is too long. But what's happening now, given the current pandemic and the issues that companies are having, creating and making products and various parts and services of technology, one of the key components in that technology not only is being delayed from a production standpoint, but has gotten a lot more expensive, right? So that's a negative of something like this. On the flip side, we have gotten more proposals and have heard more from tech companies about a lot of different things. What's been amazing is all the companies that all of a sudden are involved in testing for COVID-19, right? Traditional companies in the tech space that actually have transitioned to trying to help in the COVID-19 space. The other part we've seen is just a lot of these technology companies coming up with new innovations for that crowdless arena, right? Whether it's piping in, like we're doing here, a Zoom meeting, or live fans being able to do things while games are going on. You're seeing that. You're seeing crowd noise being put in. A lot of different apps that are being developed to enhance the game that really haven't been needed before. Maybe they were being developed for various reasons over the course of the next year or so. But we're starting to see an influx of that, as well as ways to incorporate other virtual areas. You read the last few days, baseball's looking at new virtual signage areas. We're going to be looking at the same thing for our arenas. So there are some things that you're able to speed up. There are some things that just are easy to do, like we talked about, setting up new camera angles in a venue because you have the space to be able to do that. But at the same time, there are some technologies, given production issues, that might be prolonged at this point.
Switching from non-technology to just absolute logistics, I see a question. What's the status? You see we have a poll. What's the best hub city? I was really proud to see Chicago #2 for the longest time, but it's been pushed down to #3, I think, from to Las Vegas. Obviously, Dallas, people feel really strongly it could be a good hub city. Just, I know you probably can't necessarily reveal anything, but just take us into what maybe the process is to kind of figuring this out.
Sure. So, this is really transformed. Originally, there was talk about, hey, let's do this in a neutral site. Let's do it somewhere where we could bring all the players in where there's no NHL, there's very little COVID. What we quickly realized is that in order for our sport, in order for us to do what we need to do, we really need an NHL arena, right? We need the ice to be what it is. We need the locker rooms. We need everything that we can to make it as comfortable as possible, and have it be, a real NHL environment, right? So that quickly got us to say, all right, we need an NHL building. Then you need a city that can house, we were always deciding, is it 2 cities, 3, 4 cities? We're still trying to figure that out. But the fewer amount of cities you have, the easier it is to contain, right, this idea of the bubble. So you need a city that can allow for multiple rinks, right, for practices, the ability for players to be able to be in a central location with easy access to all of those rinks. But at the same time, they need a place to sleep. They need a place to eat. They need a place to work out. They're going to want some food. They're going to want entertainment, right? They're going to want to make sure they can get their coffee in the morning. So Steve Mayer, who is probably working harder than any of us during this time, along with Gary and Bill, is really at the forefront of trying to figure this out with his events team. And it's no different than trying to plan a Super Bowl or win a classic or some other major event, where we're talking to cities almost in a bid fashion that we can go ahead and figure out how to play. Obviously, Vegas is an easy one to think about because the number of hotel rooms, everything is so close to each other. They're used to these kind of things. But a city like Dallas, right, is great. A lot of it is dependent upon the local municipality, right? So we would love to have a hub in Canada, but there are quarantine rules. So how does that affect what we want to do? Right now, there might be a decrease in one city of COVID, but that could go up in a month, right? So we have to have flexibility and leave ourselves many options. But I think right now we have a list of about 10 or so clubs that are all interested, that all could be very viable. But we're going to have to choose, again, going back, first and foremost, the safety of the players, right? They're the ones that are going to be at the most risk, the organizations themselves. So the safety of the players, that's the number one priority for us, to make sure that we can keep them safe and get it done. So from there, it's also, what do we do about testing, hospital affiliations, right? The getting on the ice part, right, is kind of the last piece, because all of these markets we're talking to, Chicago, Pittsburgh, all have great facilities, all could provide kind of that hub or bubble for us. So that's what they're working on now. And, we're probably a few weeks from making a decision. Got it.
Okay. Thanks for bringing everybody up to speed on that. I think there was a lot of excitement in Dallas when they saw they were a hub city. Times you think you might be overlooked, but the franchise here is strong, getting better with some great leadership, and I know they were excited to just be considered, and I've heard it be quite a bit of a topic of conversation here for sure.
Plus I could stay at your house. I don't have to stay at a hotel.
Cost cutting, everybody's under budget pressure right now. Although if you saw my 3-year-old coming in here whining while I had to put you on mute, you might rethink your housing decision. So there's a sponsorship question I got in Q&A, which means I get to ask you, but I get to hide behind an audience member that I didn't ask it myself. There are league-wide sponsorships that are having to be completely retooled for the season. How are you handling that? Is it very sponsor to sponsor? What are those conversations like? Is it more about the money part? Is it more about the asset, part? Kind of talk us through kind of how those fun conversations must be going.
Sure. Well, so what we've heard is all of our partners want to spend actually more money with us. So they want to keep pouring it in and keep pouring it in. That's a little bit tongue in cheek. Carla was nodding her head. It is a case by case basis. What was really helpful, at least to some degree for us, and every sport has its own dynamics at play, even though we share a lot of the same partners and we're all in the same kind of IP and event and media business. We were 87% done with our season. From a national standpoint, there were very few games left on NBC and NBC Sportsnet. I think a total of 5 or 6 games. Some of our clubs missed only 2 home games. Some of our clubs missed 8 home games, right? It kind of all depended on the schedule. But by and large, we got through, anywhere from, 68 to 72 or so of our regular season games. So we played a significant amount of the season. We played those in front of fans. So that was, certainly a benefit for us. So, from a national standpoint, and then I could talk about local. From a national standpoint, we basically are in pretty good shape. The conversations we're having are on a case-by-case basis. A lot of our marketers, wanted to be very active in the months of, April, May, June, which is our standard Stanley Cup playoffs. Now that's shifting perhaps to August, which isn't necessarily as beneficial, but you start getting into the fourth quarter, September, but as I said before, that's usually when they're into college sports, the NFL, and maybe the MLB postseason. So every partner is unique. In some respects, for other partners, it's beneficial. We have some partners that are heavy marketers during the summer, but have had to shift their plans now. So we think that based on our ability to come back to play and have a full complement of playoff games, plus now this qualification round, we're actually in a position in a lot of ways to over-deliver upon our agreements with our partners. And we're going to be very creative. As I said, how we go ahead and plan that fanless arena, we think we could do some unique things for our NHL national partners. And the same thing with NBC, who we work very close with in the US. In Canada, it's Rogers. So collectively, all of us getting together to make sure we're having all those conversations. I will say the number one thing that everybody is doing that is helpful during these times is communication. We have shared every bit along the way with our partners before it's been announced in the media. We've had Gary do it. We've had Bill do it, myself, Brian Jennings, you name it. We're all having these discussions. They just want to be in the know and then be able to assess and evaluate. So from that standpoint, we've been very communicative, probably more so than we ever have been, not only externally, but even internally within the organization. So from a national standpoint, I think we're in pretty good shape as long as we go ahead and finish out the rest of the season. Locally, it's a little bit more difficult because the postseason is a really national opportunity from signage, media, and things like that. So we're working with our clubs right now to do everything we can to help them with their local sponsors as part of our return to play. But clearly they missed, some of them, a significant amount of home games without fans, without concessions, parking, right? All that game day revenue that they're missing. Broadcast commitments, like we talked about on the national side, also on the local side. So all of that is a factor. And again, it's a little bit different nationally versus locally. But from our standpoint, we're in a good place. I'll also say this, it's not like it's a work stoppage. This isn't a fight between the NHL, its players, or broadcasters, or anything like that. This is a global issue that everybody's wrestling with. All of our businesses, for the most part, have been impacted by it. And I think everyone, it's not giving a free pass. It's trying to work through those challenges, Kern, together to find some solution. And hopefully we'll never have to look like, the world will never look like this again. So everyone's got to take that long-term view, right, of how this is going to work. So, if we're all looking at it short-term, it's not going to be helpful for that relationship and that partnership moving forward. And we pride ourselves on making sure that we do everything we can, that our partners feel good, and that we have a long-term relationship, because that's really key.
Thank you. I can say firsthand that's how you've treated it. And it's appreciated by your partners, because I think we talk about sponsorships too much in this industry and not enough about partnerships. And it's got to be treated that way for it to be successful. I've got we're out of time, but I got to ask you about international. I thought I had heard that, maybe not always, but on occasion, that more people in China may watch a Maple Leafs game than people in Toronto. Obviously not on a percentage basis, but on a pure volume basis. I don't think people fully appreciate what the opportunities might be in other markets, especially Asia. I know you've spent a lot of time on it. So first, correct me on my statement if I need to be, and second, just tell us what you're working on and what you see happening internationally for the league.
Sure. Your statement is accurate to some degree, just given the sheer size. And most people don't realize that hockey is actually a popular sport in China. They played it for years. It's obviously not where the NBA is or some others, but there is actually a KHL team in China. So it's not foreign to them, so to speak. And it's also hopefully an important part for them. They've always said the Winter Olympics, it's going to be an important part, obviously, of the games. What you find sometimes is depending on the time difference is really the issue. So there are some games, depending on the time that we play them, and the broadcast by either CCTV, which is our over-the-air, or Tencent, which is our digital, where you will find that we're seeing more viewership in China than you would perhaps a regular season game in either Canada or the United States. It's not often, but it does go to the sheer size of that country and what the opportunity is. And that's really why we've been there, because we do see a tremendous opportunity, not just in China, but internationally. I mean, over 30% or so of our players come from overseas, 40% plus of our all-stars come from overseas. So we're truly a global sport in that sense, really predominantly Europe when I say that. And in many parts in Europe, we're the #1 sport, right, ahead of soccer. So for us, the ability to go to these countries and bring NHL players back home is a great business model. And when you bring Henrik Lundqvist back to Sweden, right, he is a god there. He's a legend. It means so much for him. He gets to also show his teammates what it's like. So in places like Sweden and Finland and the Czech Republic, Switzerland, Russia, hockey is so big. The problem for us internationally is simply the countries that I'm talking about. Slovakia, Finland, Sweden, they're small, right? It's not like France and Italy and Spain, right? Really big hubs for say, the NBA. But it's a very passionate and loyal fan base. And we're trying to work through building other markets, bigger markets like Germany, right? Switzerland, and obviously Russia, how we get into Russia. But what I'll say is we're going to continue to play games internationally for the foreseeable future. Obviously next year, you heard we've canceled. It's a little difficult for us given the uncertainty and everything that's happened to have that travel overseas. But you're going to see us continue to play. Our clubs want to be over there. They want to build their brands over in these countries. We think it's a great opportunity for us outside as we continue to grow the sport in North America, which we do on a year-over-year basis. But we think there's a huge opportunity for us overseas. And we're excited about it. Our players are excited about it. So you're going to see more of that, and perhaps even big events in Europe or in China over the course of the next 3 to 5 years.
Excellent. Thanks. I know many times I've tried to get a hold of you and was so offended at the delay in the response, only to find out you were somewhere in China. So
yes,
feeling bad. I know you're working hard on it. All right. You're officially our longest guest ever.
That's it. I feel like we just got started.
You were great as I expected. You've been a great friend and a very respected colleague in this industry. We appreciate the time. I can only say I'm even more excited about, as much as I like you, our next week's guest, who's Melissa Melise, running sponsorships for Southwest Airlines. You are a wonderful person, but she is a tremendously nice person. And I know a lot of people are thinking about what airlines and brands like that are going through in this crazy time we're living in. And she's really excited to kind of join us next week and provide some input on that. Lastly, I'll just remind everybody, $1 to North Texas Food Bank is 3 boxed meals for a family. With the Mavs, Stars, and Rangers, that turns to 12. Every dollar you donate turns into 12 meals for families who really need it at this time. We're 60% to our goal. I think if we hit our goal with matching, it's going to be $20,000 or $25,000. So thanks again for everybody's support. Thank you for being here. I hope to see everybody next week. I hope you guys donate or here or somewhere else to help people that are going through a really crazy time in their lives. Keith, thank you for being here. It's always great to see you. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and hopefully we'll see some of you next week.
Thank you, Kern. Thank you, Carla.
Thanks, guys.